What up, homies? It's your boy M Sage, and I know it's been a minute, but for like the last month I've been requested to make a tutorial on toggles, on avatar toggles for VRChat, or toggles, quote unquote toggles in general for Unity. So that's what I'll be going over today. This is not going to be a super quick just run through tutorial where it's like do this, do that, do this. I want you guys to be able to understand exactly what's going on, why the toggles work like this, so you can pretty much make anything you want happen with your avatar. I'm going to go over what the animation controller is, how to set up your animations, your parameters, your menu, how to actually put it on your avatar, etc., and get it all working. And to start off with, we're going to need to set up our Unity for doing toggles. First, we're going to need an animator window. If you don't have any of these windows that I have, you can just go to window and go to animation, animator, or animation for this tab. But we'll need this tab here on the side so we can properly view it. We're going to need the scene, obviously, and the game layer. We won't need the asset store there. That's just there for no reason in our case. And we're also going to need this animation tab. Make sure you go ahead and set those tabs up in the way that I have it, so we can just easily navigate between different things, and we can pretty much go from there. Also, you will need to actually have an avatar to be working on to be able to go through this tutorial. So you just have an avatar that's set up, that's just, you know, a standard FBX with an armature, and you have the VRC avatar descriptor. Cool, then you are ready to take part in this tutorial. If you don't, then you're going to have to look at a different tutorial on how to actually set all that up, which I will upload in the future and I'll tag in this video as well. And without further ado, let's get on into this tutorial. So first things first, we're going to create an animation controller. This is going to be the thing that governs all the animations in your avatar, or everything that is under the very name of your avatar. It will go inside of the animator tab under animator controller, and it will govern everything that has to do with anything that's under this. So what most people will do is that they'll tell you to go into the VRC SDK folder, go into the examples 3 folder, animations, and go into controllers, and then copy and paste the hands layer 3, which you'll end up with getting these different layers in the animation controller. But for the sake of this tutorial, so you can understand how everything works, we're going to make it from scratch completely. So to start off with, I want you to go to a good folder, maybe a folder named controllers, something like that. And you're going to right click in this empty area here. You're going to click create. Then you're going to click on animator controller. This is going to create an actual animation controller, the thing that controls all of your animations. And we're just going to name it FX layer, something like that, FX layer, whatever. Just give it a good name. As long as you can identify it. Properly naming things is important, but we get the point. All right, now we have the controller created. And now we have to actually attach it to our avatar. We're going to click on the avatar in our hierarchy. That's what this thing is called, this menu. And on the side, you're going to see the animator tab and controller. We're just going to click and drag our new FX layer into this controller tab right here. Now, if you're already working with an avatar, more than likely you'll already have an FX layer that you're going to be working with. So just click and drag that same FX layer and put it right on in here. That way, when we click on the avatar, we will see its layers. Right now, we should only see base layer and nothing under parameters. So if we click on layers and parameters, it should look just like this. So now we are ready to actually create our toggles. So we're going to be creating 2 types of toggles today. We're going to be making a basic on and off toggle for the hat, and a toggle menu, I guess that's what it's called, where you can have multiple states of this sword, where it's going to be in different sizes. 2 extremely basic toggles, which we can easily go over right now. So first things first, we need to set up our parameters, and we're going to be setting up 2 parameters, one for the sword and one for the hat. Now, what are parameters? Parameters are just numbers that are attached to values or words. And we can get really 3 different types of parameters here: a float, an integer, and a bool. A float is a number that ends in a decimal, or like 0.0, 0.1, something like that. An integer is a whole number, such as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so forth and so forth. And a bool is just a value of 0 or 1, or true or false. So in this case, we can make a parameter like the word sword, and we can say sword equals 0 if it was an integer, or we can say sword equals 1 or sword equals 2. And for the hat, we're only going to have an on and off state, so we're going to say true or false. So we're going to make another parameter, and we're going to call it hat. And we're going to make it a bool, because bool is just true or false, or yes or no. And also, don't forget to name the first parameter sword, or whatever you want to name it. If you're following along with this tutorial, awesome. If you're just trying to learn how to do it, then that's cool too. So now we can go ahead and start creating our layers. And we're going to need 2 layers. We're going to need our first layer to be called hat toggle. And then we're going to need our second layer to be called sword size. Let's just call it sword size for now. And now one thing that's very important is that we click on this little settings gear wheel thing, and we set the weight to 1. This is how much influence will this layer actually have over our avatar. We want it to have a full weight. We want it to just work 100%. Whatever we plug into this layer, we want it to just work. Same thing with the other layer as well. And for now, we're just going to mainly focus on the hat toggle, and then we'll move on to the sword size / toggle, because the hat one is going to be so much simpler. It's just a simple on and off. Now, at default, with each layer, we're going to see entry, any state, and exit. We're not going to really worry about exit. We're just going to focus on entry and any state. And specifically for this layer, we're just going to focus on entry. Entry means as soon as the avatar is loaded, as soon as we press the play button, whatever this is connected to, that will be the first thing playing right away. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click this empty space, click on create state, and click empty. And we're going to set the name of this to default. It doesn't have to be named default. It can be named anything. It can be named any state. But what this means, because it's a blank state, there's nothing attached to this state. Everything that this is right now is pretty much this. It's default. That means as soon as this plays, nothing is going to be changed. This is what we want at the base. Now, the whole point of this hat toggle layer is that we want the hat to, at some point, toggle off. So we're going to create another state. We're going to right click, create state, click on empty. And now you'll notice this is gray because it's not connected to anything. It's just blank. It's not active. And we're just going to click on this. And we're just going to name it hat off, because eventually we're going to attach an animation to this layer, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. Now that we have 2 states, and on default it plays this state, we want it eventually to go from this state to this one. How are we going to do that? With transitions. We're going to click on the default state, right click on it, and click on make transition. You'll notice there's a little arrow that comes out of it. We're going to click on the next state. And now we will make this become this at some point for some reason. Now, to set that reason, we're going to click on the arrow, and instead of saying reason, we can say conditions. When these conditions are met, then we're going to switch from this state to this state. So now let's go ahead and add a condition, and you'll notice we have parameters here, a bunch of stuff here that we can click. The first thing we can click is the parameter. Remember the hat parameter that we made before? That's a check mark. Let's set this to hat, and then it says true or false. That's because this is a true or false box. Make sure that's checked off. So the conditions of when the value of hat is equal to true, which checkbox true, when it says that it's true, then we're going to go from this state to this state. And right now it it's not true. Right now it's off, so it's false. So therefore it's not going to leave default. It's gonna stay at default and it's not gonna go over to hat off. So now whenever hat equals true, it will go over to hat off. Now let's right click on make transition, or right click on hat off, click on make transition, and make an arrow go back to default. Now let's click on that new arrow and create a new condition. We can click on hat as a condition and then set that to false. So when hat equals false, then it will go from here to here. When hat equals true, it will go from default to hat toggle off. So pretty much we press play, it will go from here to here. If this value gets ticked to that, then it will go down to play hat off. And if the value gets turned off, then it will go down to hat turned off to default, which is the hat being on. So now basically the hat toggle layer is all done. This is all you really need to set up until eventually when we make our animations, which will be very soon. You'll just plug it in here and this will be completed, but we're pretty much done with this layer. Now we can move into the sword size layer, and we can go through this much quicker because we've already covered what most of the things do in hat toggle. But the difference between hat toggle and sword size, we're going to be using any state in this. So any state means that no matter what animation or what state is currently being played, if the parameter changes, this will actually switch between one state to another for us. Instead of going from one state to the other, it will go from state to any state back to state. So first things first, we want to create an empty state. We want to go ahead and name that default because again, this is all of our default settings for everything. Then we're going to create another empty state. We're going to name that sword size 1. Why not? Call it sword size 1. And then we're going to create another one. We're going to call it sword size 2. And just for the heck of it, we'll make another one and let's call it sword off. And now what we're going to do here is we're going to right click on any state, click on make transition. We're going to make a transition between any state in each one of these other states, which means it's going to come from whatever state this is and play like this between the different transitions. Now again, we have to set these conditions just like how we set the conditions in this one, where if hat equals true, then it's going to switch to this. If hat equals false, then it's going to go back to this. In this case, we want to make the condition of if sword equals 0, which is the default state, then it stays at the default state. Then we're going to click on the next transition, sword equals 1. If the sword parameter equals 1, then it's going to start playing this state instead. Then we're going to do the same thing for the next ones. If sword equals 2, and if sword equals 3. So now we can transition between each of these. And this, once again, is pretty much done. This is all the setup we're going to need to do until we then make our animations for each one of these. And now to show you how this works, I'm going to hit the play button. Go into scene and you'll notice that now the animation is being played. And from any state, it keeps firing into the default state right now under sword, because sword value is equal to 0. Now let's say sword's value were to equal 1. Then it's going to start playing the next animation. If the value were to equal 2, then it's going to play the next, and then 3, play the next. And now if we were to go over to the hat toggle, we'll see that right now it's playing the default. And if hat were to equal true, then it's going to start playing this hat off animation, or this hat off state. Toggle it back off, it's going to go back just like that. And pretty much that is how the animator controller, or the FX layer, is to be set up for your toggles and your multiple switch menu, any state grid things. I don't know what this is called, but you know, toggle menu. And now we can get on to making the individual animations or the motions for each of these states here. So that way the controller will know exactly what is actually happening during each one of these states. So without further ado, let's get on to it. So setting up the animations or the motions for all of these states here will not be hard at all. We're just going to need one for each one of the gray states that we made. The orange states are default. We're going to leave that as none for the motion, so it's already at its default state that we want it to be. So we really just need to make 4 different animations. We're going to come to an empty folder. We're going to name it anims or animations, whichever. We're going to right click the empty space, click on create, and then click on animation. Let's name this hat off because that's the name of one of our states. Let's create another one, call it sword size 1. Let's make another one, call it sword size 2. And then last but not least, we'll create another one and call it sword off. We're then going to want to plug each of these animations into the correct states. So if you're just making one simple toggle, like let's say it's the on and off hat, you're just going to have to click on hat off and click and drag the hat off animation to the motion area. Simple, already done. If you're going to do a toggle like this where you have multiple states, then we're going to need to click and drag sword size 1 to sword size 1, sword size 2 to sword size 2, and then sword off to sword off. Now that you've done that, you will be able to click on your avatar in the hierarchy, and this will unlock the ability to edit the actual animations that you just made in the animation tab. You will see a timeline here with a bunch of frames, and what you'll want to do is go ahead and click on one of these animations like hat off, for example. Let's click on that, and now that we have it selected, we're going to be able to edit it. Now in order to edit it, we want to click on this little red circle. That's the record button. Now that we see this bar is red, anything that we do will get recorded into this timeline here. So for example, we want the hat to be turned off when this animation or this hat off state is played. So we can simply click on the hat, and in the inspector, it's going to turn it off. And notice that there's a keyframe down here. It recorded the action. It recorded the action of that rice hat being turned off. And now he's bald. Now that you've recorded that animation, you can go ahead and click on the red circle again to no longer edit that frame. Notice now it's blue because we're stuck in preview. Click on preview again, so now it's back to its default state, and you'll see that the hat is now there, even though we still have the rice hat ticked off in that same animation. Now to quickly run through the other animations, we can click on sword off, click record, click on the sword, toggle that off. Now that's recorded. Then tab out of the recording button. Go to the next one, sword size 1. Now this one's going to be a little bit different. We click on the record button. We can then click on the sword, click on the scale tool. Let's just make it a little bit bigger, like that. Then tab off, click on the next animation, click record again. And let's do another scale size thing with this. Let's just scale this thing's size to massive, something like this, you know, definitely not overcompensating for anything. And there you have it. The entire animation controller is now set up, and the animations are now set up. Now we can go ahead and hit the play button, and we can actually test if our toggles work. We can go and click on the parameters tab, and let's test out the hat. The hat is true, and the hat disappears. It's gone. Check the hat again, and it's back. Check it again, and it's gone. Check it again, and it's back. Let's try the sword. Set sword to 1. It grows. Set sword to 2. It grows even bigger. Set sword to 3, and it's gone. Set sword to 1. It's back. Set sword to 0, and it's at normal size. All of our toggles work, and they're just perfect. But now we have to actually make VRChat be able to read our animation controller and our animations so we can actually have in-game 3.0 toggles. So let's get right into our parameters and 3.0 menus. Now before we get started in making our menus, we need to go ahead and remove the FX layer that we put inside of the animation controller from that component. So we'll just click on this little bubble on the side and then click on none to get rid of that. Now we scroll down to our avatar descriptor and you'll see down in the playable layers, open that up, and then you'll click on the default non-transformative so you can actually put in your FX layer that you created. So we're going to go ahead and click and drag our FX layer that we made and put it right here. Now VRChat will actually read this animation layer. Now let's scroll down just a little bit more and we'll see the expressions tab. We'll click on the option that's there for us to drop down our menus and our parameters, and you'll see that both are actually empty. We'll need to input an expressions menu and a parameters menu. So what we'll go ahead and do is we can create a parameters menu by right clicking the project space below, click on create, then click on VRChat at the very top, avatars, and then expressions, parameters. That will spawn this default parameters menu, which we will go ahead and click on add to create a new one. In this new empty space or new copied space that we created, we can type hat with the exact same spelling that we had in the parameters under our effects layer. This is telling VRChat to look out for these parameter values, or you will be changing these parameter values. Make sure you set hat to the correct type of number it is, which right now it is a bool. It is a true or false. We're going to hit add again, change this to sword. We're going to set the type to integer because the sword is an integer parameter while hat is a bool parameter. Now we're done with this parameters menu. This is completed. We have our hat parameter and we have our sword parameter. Go back and click on the avatar, scroll down and click and drag our new parameters list to the parameters option in the expressions tab. Now we need an actual menu. We can right click the same space, click on create, click on VRChat, avatars, and now expressions menu. You can get more advanced with this, but for now I'm just going to show you how to add the individual toggles to our menu. We will go ahead and click on the avatar again, click and drag our menu to the menu tab, so now we can actually edit that menu. Click on the menu again and you'll see this button called add controller. We're going to click on that, drop down on new controller. We're going to change the name to hat toggle, change the type to toggle so that we click it once, it will change the value. Click it again, it will change the value back to its original state. And we're going to set the parameter we want it to toggle to hat. So now essentially what this means is in your 3.0 menu, when you go to your expressions tab, you will see an option called hat toggle, and when you click on it, it will change hat from the empty value to the checked value, which will then make the hat toggle off. And then you click it again and it will toggle back on. We can then do the same thing with the other options. We're going to make 3 parameters here. We're going to call this one sword size 1, sword size 2, and the last one we're going to call sword off. We're going to make all of them type toggle, and we're going to set the parameter to sword. And now when we hit this, because it's an integer, when we hit toggle, it's going to change the value from 0 to 1. When we change this value from sword, we can make it change the value from 0 to 2. If we change the value that we wanted to change to 2. And then on the sword toggle, we click on sword integer, and we want to change the value to 3. So when we hit sword off, it will play the value equals sword 3, sword off, and it will turn the sword off. And now we're done. This is the completed 3.0 menu, 3.0 parameters, toggles. This is how you create toggles for VRChat. Now I'm going to quickly go through the entire process in full speed and create a toggle for the clothing. It's going to be pretty easy. I just click on the avatar, click on the FX layer we created, put it in the controller, click on that. On the avatar, parameters, create a parameter, bool, we're going to call it pants. Go back to layers, create a layer, we're going to call it pants toggle. Click on settings, set weight to 1. Going to create a new empty, set the empty name to default, create a new empty. I'm going to call it pants off. Actually, my fault, default. I'm going to call this pants off. Right click default, make a transition back, set the conditions of pants has to be true, and then if pants is false, it will go back to its original state. Click on animation, click on, let's actually create an animation, create animation pants off, click on that, click and drag the motion, click on Nero or the avatar, click on pants off, record, click on the clothing, and we're going to toggle that off, toggle animation, go back to project, and now that is complete. Now we need to go to the parameters, going to add a parameter, call it pants, go to the expressions menu, add a control, call it pants off, toggle pants, set value to 1. Actually, we need to set the pants to a bool because it is a bool and the parameters there. And done. It is ready for VRChat. And now, without further ado, let's go ahead and export this avatar to VRChat, and let's see exactly if it works. Alright, we are now in VRChat, and the avatar is working. You can see the sword is in the hand. I still have everything on. Now, let's check out our 3.0 menu. We can see all of our toggles here. We click on hat, and the hat disappears. Click on the hat again, and the hat is back. Click on sword size 1, sword gets bigger. Sword size 2, the sword gets really big for no reason. That's almost ungodly. Click on sword off, the sword turns off. Click on sword off again, it goes back to its default state. Click on pants off. And it didn't work because I messed something up. But you know what? The rest of the stuff works, and that's all that matters. So I did end up going back into Unity, and I noticed that the VRC SDK, the parameter is named pants with an S, and then in the animation controller, the name of the parameter is pants without an S, or pant. So little things like that can happen, and a very common mistake that people will run into when their toggles don't work is that the parameter names aren't exactly the same like they need to be. It needs to be the same capitalization, same spelling, same spacing, everything. And with that being said, now you should know exactly how toggles work. You should be able to go into VRChat, toggle your hat, your wands, your all kinds of things that you want toggled in VRChat. And in conclusion, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope you took a lot from this video, and hopefully it wasn't too long. I just really wanted to explain exactly how everything works. That way you can make anything happen, any other kind of possibilities happen with that process. So if you guys enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like, and if you haven't subscribed yet and you want to become part of the Homely family today, then go ahead and do so. And I will see you guys later. Peace and much love.
Peter Pan, that's what they call me. I promise that you'll never be lonely. Peter Pan, that's what they call me. I promise promise that you'll never be lonely. Be the fam, that's what they call me. I promise that you'll